Imagine a single man so powerful that when the United States government ran out of money, they had to knock on his door and beg for a loan. Not once but twice. Imagine a man who hated competition so much that he simply bought every company in sight and merged them into giant monopolies. He created General Electric, he created US Steel, he created AT&T. He was not a president, he was never elected to anything. But for 40 years he was the unofficial king of America. His name was John Pierpont Morgan. And his story explains why the American economy looks the way it does today. To understand J.P. Morgan, you have to understand his personality. He was not like the Rothschilds who operated in the shadows. Morgan was a giant physically and mentally. He had a terrifying gaze and a nose disfigured by a skin disease that made him look intimidating. People said that looking him in the eye was like staring into the lights of an oncoming train. He believed in one thing above all else: order. He hated chaos. He hated ruinous competition, where companies lowered prices to fight each other. He called it waste. His solution was simple: Morganization. This was his personal method. He would take bankrupt, chaotic railroads and competing steel mills. He would force the owners into a room, lock the door, and not let them out until they agreed to merge. He turned hundreds of small fighting companies into massive, efficient monopolies controlled by him. But his greatest moment came in the panic of 1907. The New York Stock Exchange was crashing. Banks were collapsing like dominoes. People were lining up on the streets to withdraw their money. There was no Federal Reserve back then. There was no one to save the system. Except J.P. Morgan. At the age of 70, he summoned the richest bankers in New York to his private library. He locked the massive bronze doors and put the key in his pocket. He told them, "Nobody leaves this room until we raise $25 million to save the trust companies." The bankers argued. They complained. But Morgan sat there playing solitaire, smoking his cigar and waiting. Eventually they surrendered. They signed the papers. They pledged the money. Morgan unlocked the door, and the next morning the market was saved. Think about that power. One man in a library decided the fate of the entire US economy. This terrified the politicians. They realized that a private citizen had more power than the government. They dragged him to testify before Congress. They asked him, "Is not commercial credit based primarily upon money or property?" Morgan gave a legendary answer: "No, sir. The first thing is character, because a man I do not trust could not get money from me on all the bonds in Christendom." Morgan truly believed he was doing God's work by bringing order to the world. But his power was too much for a democracy to handle. Because of the panic of 1907, the government decided they could never rely on one man again. So they created the Federal Reserve System in 1913. Ironically, J.P. Morgan died that same year. It was the end of an era. When he died, his fortune was estimated at $80 million. John D. Rockefeller, who was much richer, read the news and said, "And to think he wasn't even a rich man." This shows that Morgan's power was not just about the size of his bank account. It was about his influence, his reputation, his character. Today, we live in a world built by J.P. Morgan. The bank that bears his name, Morgan Chase, is the largest bank in the United States. The companies he built like GE and US Steel defined the American century. But his legacy is a double-edged sword. He brought stability and efficiency. But he also created the too big to fail problem. He taught Wall Street that if you are big enough, the rules do not apply to you. And if you are big enough, the government will always bail you out. Or in Morgan's case, you bail out the government. In our next video, we are going to meet the man who actually was the richest American in history. The man who mocked Morgan's wealth. He discovered black gold and built a monopoly so big the government had to break it into 34 pieces. Get ready for the Rockefellers. Subscribe to Hidden Logic because we are connecting the dots of history. See you in the next one.